Our Media Madness segment tonight. For 65 days, the mainstream media, the big three networks, NBC, ABC, CBS, in their evening broadcasts, said not a single word about the federal corruption trial of Democratic Senator Bob Menendez. For 65 days. Even though this was the first time a sitting senator faced felony corruption charges in 36 years, or 10 years, depending on if you count the overturned conviction of Senator Ted Stevens in 2009, the mainstream media, silent. But then, once the jury on the Menendez case was deadlocked and the judge declared a mistrial, then the mainstream media finally, they talked about it. But guess what they said? With me now, Dr. Tom Borelli. Dr. Borelli, good to see you.
Great to be back, Liz.
All right, Dr. Borelli, 65 days, the big three networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS, said nothing in their evening broadcast. This is flabbergasting to me that something as large as this, regardless of what the ultimate verdict would be, whether it be a mistrial, guilty, not guilty, what have you, they said nothing about it.
No, you're absolutely right. It's clearly outrageous and really shows that the media is actually part of the Democrat Party. They really have their fingers on the scale. They're not a neutral arbiter of the truth. They are part of the Democrat establishment. What they're really trying to do here, I think, and they've given far more coverage, obviously, to Roy Moore and the sexual allegations against him. What they're trying to do is really push the balance of the Senate back into Democrat hands. They're going to bury information that they don't want to communicate to the American people and then advertise negative information. It's clear bias, and it's outrageous.
It is. How insulting to the American people. I mean, think about people in New Jersey, for example, who are under the representation of Senator Bob Menendez. Might they want to know that their own senator is facing charges of felony bribery, conspiracy, false statements to a government agent, all these types of horrible corruption charges? Might they want to know? What if they only watch these broadcasts? I mean, absolutely so insulting to these people. 71 days into the trial, Dr. Borelli, these mainstream networks finally decided that it was worth a mention. Not until there was a hung jury, the mistrial declared because the jury was deadlocked by the judge. Suddenly the networks wanted to cover this story, but only to point out the lack of conviction, only to point out the fact that the jury was deadlocked and did not convict the man.
Isn't that convenient? Again, all the data really points to the way the media is really trying to push the left-wing agenda. And it's really not surprising because the vast majority of journalists, guess what? Ideologically, they're Democrats. Where are they from? Well, a lot of the media organizations, or most of them, are based in where? In California, in New York, in Washington, D.C. It's groupthink. There's no other way to say it. It's groupthink. They're all on the same path. And it's really amazing. The Media Research Center did a study on the Menendez issue, and there was a huge difference. Like 23 minutes was spent on Judge Roy Moore and the sexual allegations, and only 2 minutes on Menendez. That's a 10-fold difference.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrible. And it's always striking to me in cases like this that this is a partisan issue. You'd think when it comes, to bribery, possible corruption of a United States senator, a very high office in our country, that this wouldn't be partisan, that Democrats and Republicans could group together and be like, no, it's not okay for you to sell political favors as a sitting United States senator. You'd think this wouldn't be something where Democrats would turn a blind eye just because he happens to have the initial of their party behind his name. It's shocking. I want to show two things on the screen. First of all, I want to show from CBS Evening News broadcast. By the way, they only gave it 1 minute and 50 seconds of coverage after 71 days. They started with supporters cheered as Senator Robert Menendez stepped to the podium to blast government prosecutors. That was how they opened their story, saying nothing about the corruption charge or what he'd been accused of. Then CBS correspondent Anna Werner said, and I think we just showed this on the screen, she said Menendez had one more thing to say as he heads back to Washington. He said, to those who were digging my political grave so you could jump into my seat, I know who you are and I won't forget you. Dr. Borelli, in the entirety of their coverage of this trial, they did not even mention what he was accused of doing.
Yeah, it is really clearly outrageous. But you know what, Liz, the American people are really up to this. They're smart because remember, President Trump has really labeled them as fake news in a lot of instances, and that really has stuck with a lot of American people. And a recent Quinnipiac poll found that 58% of Americans feel that disapprove of the way the media is covering President Trump. So nobody's really being fooled here. It's really going to work against them, again, because they're really trying just to push the left-wing narrative.
Right, and who can blame the American people for not trusting these mainstream media networks? They aren't told the truth. They basically put blinders on so the people don't see what's happening if it's not in the interest of the Democratic Party. That's why so many people tune in to our network, tune in to watch this TV show, because we
Correct.
actually tell the truth, whether it's flattering or not. But I want to talk about some of these allegations so people know what Senator Menendez was accused of doing: bribery, corruption, conspiracy, and false statements against a government agent. This stuff, this constituted what was included here. Was this senator tried to derail the federal investigation of a man who was later convicted of the largest Medicare fraud scheme in the entire history of our country. Something like $90 million of Medicare fraud this Dr. Solomon Melgen committed, and Senator Menendez tried to derail that investigation because he considered Dr. Melgen to be a friend. He sold political favors to this man and got in return visas for this man's foreign girlfriends, among whom were porn stars, foreign porn stars. And he claimed that this was not a quid pro quo, this was not bribery, because this guy was a friend. I don't understand how any jury sitting anywhere could consider this not to be bribery and corruption.
Let's talk about the definition of the swamp. It doesn't get any swampier than what you just described about the trial and the elements of what Senator Menendez was accused of. We sure hope that the government takes another look at a trial again, because from what I read, the evidence was really overwhelming. This is exactly why the American people are just so fed up with the federal government. It's the swamp. Senator Menendez is a perfect example of that, accused of trading political favors for a friend for money. It doesn't get worse than that.
No, and I think I speak for at least myself and a large portion of our viewers when we say it doesn't matter what political party you're in. We do not want this kind of corruption and bribery to be carried out and to be legal when it is carried out by members of Congress and the Senate. It's horrifying. These people are supposed to represent us. They're not supposed to be selling political favors in exchange for money and luxury travel and even child prostitution allegations. It's absolutely sickening. Dr. Borelli, thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate it, sir. All right, guys, you have 1 minute to tweet me at Liz_Wheeler. Before we're back with Julia Nista, a white American man claims he's actually a transracial, transgender Filipino woman. We'll show you that video in a moment. It is quite something.